Hi, I'm Lisa Joya Akers, and welcome to WWDBTV, and a new show that we're going to talk about history, culture, and entertainment in Las Vegas. My guest today is the beautiful Diane Michelle Duckworth Varney, also known as Ducky. Diane, thank you so much for being here today. I know how busy you are. You are a real estate agent in Las Vegas selling luxury homes.
Yes, I am.
And so thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy life and your busy day to come talk with me today.
Time well spent, Lisa. This is one of my favorite things to do.
Oh, beautiful.
Talking about the history of Las Vegas and the exciting life I've had to enjoy is really an honor.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about your early life because you were a former showgirl.
Yes, I was.
So can you tell, but before we get into that, can you tell me a little bit about where you grew up? Are you
Sure.
a Las Vegas native?
I am. I am a native, actually. I grew up here. I came here at a very young age and started school and stayed here the whole way through. I had a short little stint where I went to California and came back. That's the old saying in Las Vegas, right? You can leave, but you're going to always come back. And so I definitely fall into that category. But Las Vegas is my home. I do consider myself a native.
Wonderful. And you graduated from high school here? What
Valley High.
Valley
Go
High.
Vikings.
Very good. All righty. So what do you remember about growing up in this desert community?
Well, I remember it being small, Lisa.
Really? Because it's not small anymore.
No, it is certainly not. So there were about 200,000 people here when I graduated high school and got into show business. So we're approaching 3 million now.
Oh, wow.
So we've gone through some big changes. Yeah.
So before you became a showgirl, I remember you telling me that you started modeling at the age of 13.
I did actually.
Okay.
Yes.
How did
yes.
that start?
Well, my wonderful friend and artist, Judy Morio, she discovered me. I mean, you hear these stories about people being discovered, and she truly did, because I was only 13 years old and I was at a convention at the convention center, and she had a little booth set up, and she had a raffle going on where you could just fill out a ticket and put it in the bin for a free year of modeling training.
Well, and let me just stop you right there, just for the audience to know. Judy Morio is the host of another show on this network. It's called What's Your Story? And and she's become a very dear friend of mine, but now I would love to hear how this all worked out for you.
Right. Well, having known her since I was 13, wow. She's family to me, and we struck up a conversation. I can still remember, Lisa, what I was wearing that day, even though I was 13 years old. It was midriff, you know, Cher was popular. So anyway, she looked at me and she kind of looked down her nose a little bit and she said, "You have potential." And I walked away from that booth with my mother and I said, "Mom, what does potential mean?" I didn't even know. And so she explained it to me, and then of course I got a call from Judy and she put me through the school completely. She
was running a modeling school.
She was running a modeling school,
okay.
And she offered to put me through the school.
Did you at any point, or did Mom at any point think it was, maybe this isn't what it
Never.
No? Okay.
Never.
Wonderful.
No, my mother had a background in show business as well. As a matter of fact, in some of the photos that I have of my mother, the signature on the very bottom is Bruno of Hollywood. Uh-oh. And we all know that the famous Marilyn Monroe picture, you know, this one is Bruno of Hollywood. So
okay.
We have a history in our family here of women having these wonderful, glamorous opportunities.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
All right, so tell me a little bit about your modeling career. What was it like going to school and also modeling?
Yeah, it was busy. I've always been busy my whole life. There's been multiple things going on at any point in time. So that's just kind of my nature. I'm a little bit of a high achiever personality, I think. And so I would go to school, and then I would go to modeling school afterwards and on weekends. And I remember even if I had a little cough or a little cold or something, I still went to Judy's studio. It was very close to where I lived, almost walking distance, just maybe a couple of miles. So I spent a lot of time there, and then the modeling industry continued to grow. And so I had the opportunity to work for wonderful people. Edith Head, of course, the famous costume designer. She selected one local model from Las Vegas, and so she had an audition, and she selected one, and I was selected. And so I had an opportunity to wear some of her original gowns from the movies. Ava Gardner, Marilyn Monroe.
And you wore them on the runway or?
On the runway, because she came here for a fashion show.
Okay.
And she brought a collection with her. So,
and where did this take place? Where was the runway?
You know, I don't even remember.
Okay.
It had to have been in a hotel because the city was so small. We didn't have, the only thing we had at that point was the Las Vegas Convention Center.
Okay.
And it was nothing like it is today. But, you know, a lot of times the hotels would turn their showrooms or their restaurants or something, they'd turn it into a runway. I remember one time with Judy, they actually put tables together to create a runway, but they didn't take the tablecloths off. So when we tried to spin, when we were walking down the runway modeling the clothes, the whole tablecloth would go with us when we tried to do a French turn or a European turn or something like that. So we kind of decided not to turn at that particular show. But a lot of work for Judy for many, many years.
Who was in the audience for these fashion shows?
Usually high society women.
Okay.
Yeah, because we had hotel owners at that point in time. It wasn't corporations like it is in Las Vegas. So your owners, your general managers, they were residents here. They had families. The women were high society because whenever they would go out to a show or a dinner, it was always an evening gown, full length, beads, furs, sequins, cape with a collar. I mean, just absolute glamour.
And so they would come to your shows. Did they ever have any outfits that they could purchase like they do today for fashion runways?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We did what we call trunk shows, which would be a traveling designer that would bring a collection and we would wear the collection. Whenever a designer wanted to do a fashion show, they would always interview the models. So they wanted to make sure they had their look that they wanted to portray, that the size, they would fit into the clothing properly. There was always some sort of an audition. I remember on my first one, Judy sent me out, we call them go-see. She sent me out on a go-see call.
Go-see.
And they said to me, well, walk for us. And I didn't know that meant model. So I just walked from one end of the room to the back. And of course, I found out I was 13 when this all started. So there was a lot to learn. And
you learned it from Judy. And
I learned it. Judy is a My Fair Lady story for me. She turned me into a lady. And
that's amazing.
And she's very near and dear to my heart. We're still very close. I'm also an artist, and so I paint with her.
Yes, that's
yes,
great.
we paint together.
She's going to be one of the guests on the show because her story does need to be shared.
Oh, well, you'll have to have her on a lot of times in order to even get a small snippet of her life. She's an amazing, accomplished, and wonderful woman.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Also, as a model, did you travel the world at all, or did you stay local?
I pretty much stayed local. I traveled a little bit as a dancer. But the modeling was mainly local.
Okay, sounds good. How did modeling, well, you did come from a showbiz family, how did modeling shape your life and the person that you've become? Did it have an impact on you?
Yes, it really did. I think when you're that age and you're a young teenager and you're a woman and you're blossoming into your womanhood, that you're very impressionable. And this is so important too for our young people now.
Right.
They need that. I'm so fortunate that somebody just picked me out and said, "You're going to go somewhere, and I'm going to make sure it happens." And so
a trustworthy individual. Yeah,
absolutely.
You know, somebody
Absolutely.
who could really, a mentor.
Yes.
Okay, I've
Yes.
had a few of those in my life, so I know exactly
so you know
what they're
what I
like.
mean.
Absolutely.
Sure. So with that, all the little things sunk in, and I mean, this morning when I was doing my makeup to come here, I was thinking about Judy and how she taught me to do a makeup for television. So it's all still there.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's still there.
All right, so now let's talk about the world of showgirls. How did you segue from being a model? It almost seems like it's a no-brainer. But how did you become a showgirl?
It does. It kind of happened by necessity, to be honest with you. So, as I said, I graduated from Valley High School, and 1 month after my high school graduation, my mom unexpectedly died.
Oh.
And my father was estranged, so he was not around at that time. It wasn't until he was 91 that we actually had some sort of, and I know you're a historian, so we'll talk about that. But anyway, at that point in time, it was just my mother and I, and so I needed to get to work. And I had been studying ballet all my life.
Did you mention how old you were at the time?
I was 18, so it was 1 month after my high school graduation.
Right.
So there was no question of college or, it was figure it out. I had to support myself. And because I was doing so much ballet after school, in high school at that point in time, I was doing a lot of ballet. I'd done it since I was a kid anyway, but I was really enjoying dance. It seemed like the next logical step for me. So by the time I was 19, I had actually gotten hired into my first show, and my life pretty much took off from there.
When we first met and talked, you had said something about the audition. Tell us about your first audition.
Oh my goodness, the audition was, this is such a wonderful story. So going to an audition, there is an unspoken protocol on how you show up. So if you weren't going and taking classical, traditional ballet dance, at that point, Backstage Dance Studio was the only place to go. If you weren't in the know with the performers, you wouldn't know this, but your hair had to be completely pulled back from your face and up.
Okay.
Because they wanted to see your face and how it would appear in a costume with a headdress or whatever. This is what they're going to see. So they don't want the hair covering or anything like that. Full makeup, eyelashes, red lipstick, fishnets, leotard, and one of two pair of dance shoes.
Okay.
Either a Hermes sandal or a Capezio heel. So this was like, if you didn't show up that way, you were already kind of not going to get selected. So there were about 200 people, and we all went up on stage, and the lights were so hot, and everybody was nervous. And
what show were you auditioning for?
This was Hallelujah Hollywood,
okay,
which was at that time the MGM, and later became Bally's. So here's 200 people on stage who just slowly get picked off. And the way it would happen is you'd be on the stage, and then the person that was making the selection at this point was Fluff Laco, who worked for Don Arden.
Yes.
You know, you've done this history.
Yes.
She would stand right at the edge of the stage. So you would walk down to the end of the stage where the audience began, and she'd kind of do one of these, and she would typically dismiss you. And then you left. So all these people just kept leaving and leaving and leaving, and there were down to 3 of us, 3 girls. And this was the showgirl positions that were open. And so by that point, I was like, okay, I made it this far. There were 3, and sure enough, Fluff. And so I went downstage, and that's what we call it, downstage, close to the audience. And she said, "I'm sorry, Diane, but you're just not tall enough." Now, our producer's laughing, by the way, on that. So I am over 6 feet tall in heels, okay? And I was always the tallest girl in school. I was taller than all of the boys. And the one time that I thought maybe this would be an advantage for me in life, it was a disadvantage because I wasn't tall enough, so there were 2 left. So I went home, told all my friends and, close people at the time what had happened and how far I'd come. And I was like, well, okay, I just keep, just get back on the horse, right? A week later, I got a telephone call. Diane, this is Flufflico. We'd like you to come in this evening in between shows. Please come backstage. So I did, and she hired me. Wow. Yeah. Apparently, they couldn't find anybody taller than me. I don't know what happened. I didn't ask, but I was just absolutely thrilled. And whenever you were invited, if you were not in the show and you were invited in between shows, that's when the action happened. That's when a lot happened, was in between shows. So what she did when I came back was there was a staircase that was alongside, because it was in between shows, there was a staircase, and she said, I want you to climb up to the top, walk down each step one at a time. When you hit the platform, take 2 steps, and then walk down to the bottom. And that's what I did. And her line captain was there, who was the one that would be teaching me. And she looked at the line captain, and the line captain gave her a nod, and that was it. Just come and sign your papers.
I'm sure because of that dance background, you had the stature and the foundation to do it. Can you tell me, do you have any idea what the other 200 or so people, what dismissed them? What caused them when she did this? Yeah. And they came to the bottom, and then she would say, "You're off." What was the reason?
Well, obviously height. Height. That probably had a lot to do with it. Perhaps their training, because we had to do some steps and some walking and move across the stage and that sort of thing. So as you said, perhaps the way they carried themselves. And the face, because the hair was all pulled back and everything, they wanted to make sure there was nice bone structure and whatever it was they were looking for. And most of these shows, they really had a look. So it was kind of like those modeling go-see calls that I told you about. They were just looking in particular. They had an idea, a vision, an image in their mind. And you had to fit into that.
Yeah. I was thinking, Hallelujah Hollywood versus the Follies. Do you think that there's a different look? Okay, so they have a different look. Absolutely. So that's what they're looking for.
Absolutely. Okay. Luckily, I fit the look of all the shows I wanted to be in, but they really did. Even the Follies, they had a lot of acrobats. And tall people don't make good acrobats because you have to be able to move your body around. You have to be compact. So they were smaller. They were shorter, and the stage was smaller. So now, when it came to the mannequins and the showgirls, they select really tall people because you had to carry a lot with your hats and so on. But definitely an image.
Why don't you share some of the shows that you were in?
So starting with Hallelujah Hollywood, and also Folie Bergère. And I worked out of the country a little bit. I did some small shows in Mexico City. I actually worked for Red Fox. He had a show at the Landmark called Red Hot and Foxy. That was really fun. That was different. Boy, I got some stories with that one. And
share one. Give me one that really pops out to you.
Well, when I think about Red, the first thing that I think about is loyalty. Because he had friends from the neighborhood that he grew up with, and he took them all with him when he became a successful man. And I really appreciated that. He didn't leave anyone behind. So backstage was just all this hustle and bustle of a very cohesive family of friends that trusted each other and knew each other for a very long time. And he never forgot where he came from. He took people with him.
And that sticks with you to this day.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's great. And then, of course, we were paid in cash. I mean, who doesn't know that Red had difficulty with the IRS and that sort of thing? So it was all cash.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and talk a little bit about the headdresses. Were they heavy?
Oh, yeah.
I did hear that.
Well, now we have all these wonderful types of metals, aluminum and lightweight. Everything was metal then, solid metal. So you see all these beautiful fluffy feathers and it just looks light and airy, but all of those things are anchored to metal, to a metal piece, and then a skull cap that fits on your head. And so I have a very small head. And it was a problem because if my costume had to be worn by what we call the swing girl on my night off, because we had one night off, she couldn't get it on. So what I had to do was I had to have the big hats, and then there was foam in the back to make it smaller. And then usually the swing girl would rip the foam out the night she had to work if she got stuck with one of my headdresses, and the dressers would have to sew it back in the following day. So just little things. And then in the opening act of Hallelujah Hollywood, I had the most difficult headdress of all the mannequins at that point in time. In fact, there was a dresser standing right beside the stage that had to put it on my head every night because that was the only way to get it on. So she would lift it up, she'd put it over my head, and what it was like a firework fountain of stars. So it was like a M shape, right? The stars all shut up, and then they came out like this all the way on the sides, and it was just these wires with stars, all metal, just stuck to the top of the headdress here. So I had to grab the sides of them here because that was the only way that's how that costume was worn. You grabbed the sides, which was all the little wires and the stars shooting out the fountain of the head, and that was how you worked that particular costume. So May, she was my dresser. She would be there every night. She would put it on, and then she'd hand me the sides and everything, and I'd walk out. One night, because the first place I would go is to the top of a staircase and then parade down the staircase, like the one Fluff had me audition on, parade down the staircase, step, 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 1, 2 on the platform, and then straight down to the bottom of the stage. One night, the stage hands did not join the set pieces together, and there was a little gap between them. Oh. And this was at the very top of the stairs, and I stepped and my heel went down the separation between the two pieces of staircases.
Because you can't look down, can you?
No. No, you can't. Because the headdress would have,
right.
I would have been injured, to be honest with you. It was so heavy. So my legs go underneath me because of what happened with now the show is on. And I literally slide down the staircase on my shins because my legs went underneath me. I'm still holding on to the hat. And then for some odd reason, by the time I actually got to the stage, both of my feet were back underneath me. I stood up, I finished the number, and I never really missed a beat. But my legs were so bruised, you could almost count every stair on my shins that I bounced down. So when you talk about those headdresses, I mean, you're committed. when you're on stage and you have one of those on, it's not coming off. And that would be horrible if it did, because you just have your hair all tied up in a bun with a fishnet underneath. Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned mannequins. Mm-hmm. Was that Tell us about
So
mannequins.
A mannequin and a showgirl are similar because you have, like, for instance, that costume that I just explained to you, the opening number for Hallelujah Hollywood, you can't dance in that. So you can step and maybe do a hippity hop, but it's mainly a parade because the costume is so incredibly majestic. Okay. So in that case, you would be a mannequin. Now, I also danced. I was a professional dancer, so there was dancing that I did, but that was more of a mannequin or a showgirl number and costume. And there were 12 of us, and we all had big, grand costumes in that opening number like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what kind of restrictions showgirls might have had to fall under? For example, were you allowed to gain any weight, or what about dating?
Yeah, good question. So you had to fit into your costume, and it was designed for you. So when you took your spot in the show, if there was someone before you that had all of your costumes, and everything was designed to fit her. So if you needed a little nip or a tuck or this or that here or there, then you'd fit into everything. It was part before you went on, part of your rehearsals, the fittings. And so that had to fit you at all times. So if you gained weight, I mean, you wouldn't be able to zip the thing up. You just didn't do it. So we were very accountable and very responsible for that sort of thing. We loved what we were doing.
Right.
And for me, I mean, a normal day for me was ballet at 4, jazz at 5, backstage by 6:30, show at 7:30, first show, second show, get home maybe around 2:30, get up and do it all over again. I mean, I was an athlete. So with everything that I did, 10 numbers on stage twice a night, and then ballet and jazz every night before the show, it really wasn't too much of a problem. I was light, I'll be honest with you, and I didn't eat much in between shows. I'd usually eat an orange and maybe a little popcorn, and that was about it.
Doesn't sound like you had room for dating.
Not really.
No, it doesn't sound like it.
Honestly, a lot of the gals wound up in relationships with stagehands, waiters in the showrooms, people that work backstage, because that's who we saw
That was your
most.
family.
It was our family.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I do remember you saying that contracts, they were not long-standing.
No.
Talk a little bit about that.
So the longest contract was usually 6 months. So that audition that I told you about with the 200 people, every 6 months, when you're in the show, you had to go and do that again.
Okay.
Yes. So you had to re-audition. Once in a while, maybe somebody that was just outstanding, Don Arden, because he would come and sit in the audience and he would tell Fluff, renew her contract, because he just loved her. I know there was one gal that sat next to me and she says, I just renewed my contract. She says, I don't know what happened. And I said, I know what happened. You're gorgeous. They don't want to lose you. But that was rare. Usually you had to re-audition every 6 months. So there was not a lot of job security and a lot of moving around.
That was very interesting. I remember when I was interviewing people for my book, The Showgirls of Las Vegas, that the women I interviewed, everyday people. I remember one saying that while she was standing at the top, all dressed and ready to go down, she was thinking, okay, when I get off work, I have to pick the kids up from school. I've got to pick up the dry cleaning. Yeah. And so life goes on whether you're standing there in the most beautiful costumes. Because showgirls were considered the most beautiful women in the world.
They were.
Yeah. Did audience members ever come up and talk to you? Were you allowed to talk to audience? I do know that sometimes you were able to go out onto the floor and mingle with guests. Right.
So between shows, we were allowed to go to the coffee shop and have a little snack, and people would approach us. But honestly, with the makeup that we had, 3 layers of eyelashes and just heavy, heavy, heavy makeup, if you were going to go into the casino or into the coffee shop or whatever, you just kind of had to be prepared that you're still on stage.
Okay.
Because people are going to notice. That's not the way the average person walks around. But it was encouraged to some degree to go out and be seen. I think kind of like what you said earlier, it makes us real. Right? We have real lives. We have families and dry cleaners and that sort of thing. Yeah. So, and because we were such a cohesive environment then, like I said, the owners, they were right here. They were on the premises. They had family. I think they wanted us to be a part of that to some degree as well, so that it was just more real.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
How long were you a showgirl?
Just about 10 years, not very long.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
By the time I was in my mid to late 20s, I was already starting to phase out. And
your choice, or?
It was my choice.
Okay.
Like I said, I've always kind of been a go-getter. So, one era leads into another. And honestly, at that point in time, if you were 30 or over, you were considered old. It was just... Yeah.
Physically, was it a hardship on your body as well? And by the time you're 30, were you tired out? But again, you were an athlete, so.
Yeah. I would say no.
Okay.
Yeah, it didn't have anything, for me anyway, it didn't have anything to do with physically. I never had any injuries or any problems like that. So I think it was just life, It changes. One thing leads to another, and it's not a long-lived career. And
so, what did you do after showgirl life?
Yeah, actually, I actually got a chance to go to college, so that was kind of nice to get a little bit of an education. And I went into retail, some management of a beautiful, exclusive clothing store. And we had one-of-a-kind items, and so I was used to fashion and finer things. And then from there, I went into the wellness industry, and did that for quite some time, and I love the healing arts. It's great. It's healthy. It's mindful. It's what we need right now today.
Yes. And I
right?
understand you worked in a 5-star hotel and casino
Yes,
here in town.
right here in Las
and
Vegas.
met some amazing people. Can you share?
I did, absolutely. So I had a really good clientele, and I was very much at the top of my game as a wellness provider, and some of my clients were Robin Williams, God bless him, and Steve Martin, Melanie Griffith, Don Johnson, George Strait. I could go on and on. There were quite a few.
And they're just real people too, yes?
They're just real people,
Okay.
absolutely, and lovely and wonderful. And so I had some really wonderful interactions and some repeat clients. The Prince of Monaco used to come in regularly,
Really?
and yeah, he was very interesting, a lot of fun. And the glamour continued, right?
And you've stayed in Las Vegas all of this time.
Las
I know
Vegas
that
is my home.
You've traveled.
Yeah.
And you did allude to the early days of Las Vegas with nightlife, and everybody would dress glamorously. Share with us a little bit about Las Vegas then and now. What is your perspective?
Well, it's a bit of culture shock, to be honest with you, because it was so glamorous at that point in time, and it was so small and friendly, and you could go out like maybe to a nightclub or something, and you'd see a lot of the same people time and time again, because there weren't that many of us. So we were kind of a close-knit group, and there was a place here called Dirty Sally's.
Dirty Sally's?
Dirty Sally's. It was a famous nightclub. It was so much fun. And you know, after we got done with our shows, we were wound up. You know,
Yeah.
you're exercising, you got the lights on, you're getting, you know, people that aren't in show business don't have the understanding of the energy that you get from an audience, which is absolutely incredible. That's why we see the Rolling Stones are still touring, right? They relish that. They live on, that's their soul food. That's their artistic
feed on that
appreciation.
energy, yeah.
Absolutely. So we couldn't just do the last show and go home and go to bed. So we would go out maybe to Dirty Sally's or spend a little time together, whatever. So it is very different, because if you go out now, there's so many nightclubs, there's so many places to go. And we have day clubs too at the pools, which I think is really fun. I think that was a great idea. Give people something fun to do during the daytime. They don't have to be up all hours of the night. It's another kind of a draw to Las Vegas.
Okay.
And, you know, the high rises on the Strip, which I sell.
Yeah, I was going to say, okay, so tell us just a little bit about the career you're in right now. You're a real estate agent?
Yeah, I've been doing it for 18 years.
Okay.
And it's been an incredible ride. I think all of the experience with people, different walks of people, has culminated into being able to service the real estate community very well. And of course, we have City Center now, where you know the dunes used to be, and we have the Bellagio as well. And luxury is something that I specialize in. I have a global luxury designation, and I belong to wonderful networks, global networks, and it's been a lot of fun. I get to continue to meet people. And some of the people I work with are people all the way back from show business. Our high school days I've kept in touch.
Oh, that's great.
You know, Facebook, right? And then just people that I've met along the way because they found me online, or they've been referred to me by a previous client or a friend. So it's been a very good, successful career for me.
And if somebody's interested in buying a luxury home here in Las Vegas, where will they go?
They can go to vegasluxury.com. That's my real estate business.
Wonderful.
And also, it doesn't have to be luxury, to be honest with you. Our average price point is going up so much right now because of what's happening in real estate, basically in the whole country. But again, as I mentioned, I have so many friends from so many walks of life that, you know, they may have a son that needs a condo for the first time property, or maybe they want a handful of investments. They want to spend $1 million, but they want several properties for that. That's fine too.
Very good.
I mean, the luxury is always fun. It's a designation, right? So same thing as high rise. So you kind of have to know what you're doing in order to be able to service those clients, which I do. But I'm not selective.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It's so great to talk to you,
Thank
and
you,
I love the
Lisa.
stories.
I've had a wonderful
All right.
time. It's been good talking about them.
Thank you.